Hey traders, this is Christian Fromhertz with your video of the 5 biggest themes of the week for week ending April 30th. So the first theme that I have here is the US dollar. And we had 2 big central bank meetings last week. Number one, we had the US Fed meeting. We didn't get much clarification out of Janet Yellen last week in terms of when the next interest rate hike is. She took a few of the wording or language out of what she said the last meeting, which was there's a lot of global risks. So that has been taken out, but there doesn't seem to be much further clarification on when the next rate hike is. And Fed fund futures didn't really change too much for the month of June. I think there's about a 25 to 30% chance that there may be a rate hike in June. So that was the first central bank meeting. The second was, and a little bit more of a shocker, was the Bank of Japan. They were expected to increase their quantitative easing program, possibly buy more ETFs and lower interest rates further. They did none of the above, and they held their stance as is. And we saw a lot of big currency moves that night, as well as equity moves. And the one thing that I've been noticing for a while here in the US dollar is after this big move up in, this is UUP, the US dollar bull ETF. And we've been, after this big run up, we've been in a sideways pattern for the better part of a year. And it does look like we're starting to break down. You know, in fact, last week, if you look at this in terms of value areas, and now I'm just switching to dollar futures, this is the weekly chart. And you can see, you know, for a while we had some consolidation right around the bottom of value here, but we definitely broke that last week. So, you know, why is this important? A lot of implications for multinational corporations, industrials, consumer staples, things like that, which should do better with a weaker dollar. So that's the number one theme of the week, or number one takeaway of the week, is the US dollar is starting to break down here and break trend. Number two, we had a lot of earnings last night. Apple was obviously in the spotlight, a couple different places from earnings, as well as Carl Icahn mentioned that he is no longer holding any Apple. We saw a big drop in that stock. It was down 11%. We also saw a lot of semi names fall down at the end of the week, and biotech as well. So Gilead was down 13% for the week. Big sell-off on Thursday and Friday. Celgene was down after they reported. They did come back, but then only to sell off a little bit more. So a couple of things that I wanted to point out. You know, technology and biotech. You can look at a Q's chart. And I noticed this last week, and I actually sent out a trade idea in last week's newsletter talking about going short the Qs versus long SPY in terms of a relative value type trade. And also, it looks like the Qs and the SPY, you know, looking at a longer term chart, there was a head and shoulders pattern that appeared there. So I liked going short Qs versus long SPY. And here's a couple of things to, you know, just looking at the Qs in isolation on the daily chart, a few different things to point out here. Number one, a crossover here in the moving averages that I have. These are the 5 and 20 exponential moving averages. So when the yellow line crosses below the blue, that is a sell signal. This happened last week. MACD crossover, the blue line crossed below the yellow. That's also a sell signal. If you look at the Williams percentage R indicator as well, anything normally when this falls below a -50, that's a sell signal. That has not happened in some time. Take a look. It's gotten to -50 before and bounced. The last time that happened was all the way back here. So it'll be interesting to see if this line, if the indicator remains below 50. And the same thing in stochastics, you know, also a crossover here. A lot of these, like I said, happened about a week to 2 weeks ago, but I did point that out in last week's newsletter. What I'm watching now is if you go to the daily chart, you know, notice on Friday, we did bounce back a little bit in Friday's trading, and look at where we fell. We fell right to the bottom of value. So hammer bar came in here. So this will act as short-term support. Just very interesting using the value area study. The price actually got right there and bounced. So if you switch over to the weekly chart and the Qs, what I would be watching is this level right here, which is 104.29. That's going to be your support level for the Qs. So you would want to see, if you're bullish, you want to see possibly if we get there, you want to see us bounce. If you're bearish, you want to see us break the support, go down further. I do have a conversion point of control line drawn here, which could be on the horizon. That is from here. And then we also saw this in semis. I also wrote about the semis the day after Apple reported. They actually went up that day, and then they completely fell into value, and were one of the worst performers on Friday. Really took it on the chin on Friday. We're down 2.5% as a group, and a couple names did report earnings. Xilinx and Skyworks also had earnings that were pretty weak there. So that is the second trend. Number three. Now we move to the plus side, and copper was up 2.2% on Friday. This has been in a very nice trend. What I'm watching at, or excuse me, what I'm looking for is a move into value on the weekly chart, which is right where we are, 2.282, to see if this move can be sustained. If you look back a little bit further, you could see that this thing has been in a really big downtrend. So we have poked our, nose. It's poked its nose above this downtrend. Can it be sustained? And what I would be looking for is a move into value. We did this a few months ago. Actually, excuse me, this was last year. It got to the top of value on this particular value area, and never got into it. So it's tried to do it a couple weeks ago. It's trying to do it again. I will look to go long copper if that happens. There was a story out that I thought was very interesting. A couple different reports about China securities regulator ordering major commodities exchanges to control future speculation. So I thought this was very interesting. We've seen that they curbed the equity speculation over in China months ago, and we saw what happened to that index. We'll see if they do the same type of if the regulators get involved in terms of the commodity speculation over in China. So keep your eye on that type of story. That could possibly halt what we've seen in this reflation type trade of all the commodities rallying in 2016. So, and another chart that I'm watching here is the DBA ETF. I'll actually pull up my newsletter. This is the commodity futures ETF. This ETF holds futures contracts in sugar, soybeans, corn, coffee, cocoa, cattle, et cetera, et cetera. And just like copper, it is trying to get into the value area here on the weekly chart. So it is trying to break trend. It's at a very nice run from the lows, but want to see a sustained move. And that'll be confirmed if it gets into the value area. So that's what I'm looking for. 2108 is the level to watch in DBA for me to initiate a long position in that space. So that is number three. Number four, I want to talk about ETF outflows. This has been a break in trend. I'd say for the last 2 months, we've seen nothing but inflows go into equity ETFs. This is one of the first. This is actually the first week, I'd say, in about 2 months plus, that we've seen outflows in equity ETFs. $734 million came out of equity ETFs this week, and fixed income ETFs actually saw $1.4 billion in inflows. A lot of those went into aggregate bonds, so the big bond ETFs, which are a little bit of everything. Also, we saw a lot of sector outflows this week: consumer discretionary, financials, tech, and industrials. Again, haven't seen something like this in quite a while. You could see there was very little inflows for the week in sectors. Healthcare saw a little bit of inflows. Energy also continues to see inflows. But take a look at these. Consumer discretionary, $493 million in outflows. That's a big chunk of change. Also in financials, as they look a little bit vulnerable to a turnover here. Technology did see a big outflow in XLK. Consumer staples as well. And industrial. So a lot of big chunky outflows in sectors. XLY, XRT. I find this particularly interesting. There was a story out about Walmart and Costco possibly worried about consumer spending as oil goes up. It's been great for the market because I really think that's helped the S&P move higher is the rally in commodities and specifically oil. However, will that curb consumer spending? So that's something to watch. And certainly there's been a little bit of positioning taking place there. What else have we seen in terms of outflows? A lot of outflows to Europe. This has been a trend, I'd say, for the also, last month and a half. I would say a lot of outflows in Japan and Europe. They've been trading places every week. One week it's Japan having huge outflows. The other week it's Europe. This week it was Europe. They saw outflows of 900, almost roughly $1 billion in outflows this week. A lot of that came, and it's not just one particular fund. EZU 493, EWG, which is Germany, HEDG, and Fez. So, a big group of them saw outflows. And then on the flip side, I believe it's the 10th week of inflows in emerging markets. And this really picked up $869 million going into emerging market funds. And all the same, very similar. It's not just one fund that we're seeing inflows. It's not just EEM, it's VWO, it's IEMG, and EMB, which is emerging market bonds. So, those are the fourth and fifth themes of the week. A lot of outflows. I think the consumer discretionary outflows, which topped the list of the week of outflows, particularly interesting as oil moves up. And then finally, I would just talk about, something seems to be brewing in FCX. That is one that is also very much tied to copper. We talked about copper trying to get into the value area. Take a look at all the positioning going on in FCX puts. This is 63,000 puts. This happened the last Friday on the 22nd, pre-earnings. We have not seen them unwind this position. We actually saw another big put buyer come in on Thursday. This is 26,000 of the June 13 puts go up as well. So some interesting activity there yet. Not exactly sure. Thought this may be a little bit of an earnings play, but could be something else going on with the company that someone is speculating that large. Same thing. The XME ETF is also seeing a lot of put buying in this. So apparently somebody thinking that these have run so far so fast and are maybe due for a little bit of a pullback. But I don't know if we're going to get that pullback in these names if copper breaks into that value area. So there you go. So there's the 5 biggest themes of the week. And you can follow me at C.Fromhertz is my Twitter handle. And you can also sign up for our trading room at tribecatradegroup.com. We have several different packages here. We do have the market breadth indicator available for sale now. That is on sale at a special price. But please get involved if you want to see more of these themes, as well as trades that go on real time. You can get into our live trading room. So thank you very much for watching the video, and have a great weekend.